When I was fresh out of college, about to start my first publishing job at Penguin Random House, I knew my passion was helping authors share their stories with the world. But I had no idea just how hard it was to be a debut author, how hard it was to write, let alone revise an entire book, how hard it was to get traditionally published. Fast forward to now, I've worked with hundreds of authors on their books, including New York Times bestsellers. So here are my top 10 tips for aspiring authors who want to see their book on the shelf one day, including some hard truths you might not want to hear, but need to. This first tip will completely transform how you think about good writing. Work on your story as much as your sentences. Most new authors equate good writing with beautiful prose, poetic metaphors, lyrical turns of phrase, surprising imagery. All of that is important, of course. But if your goal is to have people actually read your book, it doesn't matter how pretty your sentences are if they don't actually add up to anything and tell a good story. Once I started working as a developmental book editor, I became less interested in the beauty of individual sentences and more interested in the mechanics of effective storytelling, how to maintain narrative momentum, how to develop a strong character arc, how to deliver emotional impact. Think of the story as the foundation of your book. The sentences are the rugs, the wallpaper, the furnishings. But beautiful decor doesn't matter if the floor is collapsing beneath it. Now, the flip side is also true. A solid structure will feel empty and lifeless without some style and furnishings. And even if you have the best plot in the world, if your writing doesn't hold up, the story will feel bland. You need both a strong story foundation and strong sentence-level craft to create a truly engaging book. So as you're drafting your manuscript, ask yourself, am I spending as much time developing and refining the story as I am the prose? This next point might hit too close to home, but it's probably the one you need to hear the most. Identify your procrastination traps. Many aspiring authors fail not because they don't have the talent or the ability, but because they spend their time doing everything else except for the thing that actually matters most: writing. I see it all the time. Endlessly tweaking your author website, designing mock book covers, getting lost in book talk drama. And hey, as much as I love that you're here right now, you might be doing it in this very moment, watching writing advice YouTube videos instead of actually writing. You can do all of these things, of course, but not at the expense of actually getting your draft done. There is, sadly, only one way to finish a novel. Sit your butt in the chair and put your fingers on the keys. I have this friend who's allegedly been working on a book for literally 10 years. He keeps promising me that it's coming, and I haven't seen any of it. I'm honestly not convinced he's written even a full chapter. If that sounds like you, it's time to look at where your energy is really going. You don't need to write every day because that doesn't work for every writer, but find a writing schedule that works for you and stick to it. Procrastination wears many clever disguises, so identify yours and snap out of them. Then go write the dang book. This next tip is so simple, but you'd be surprised how many authors skip it. Go to the bookstore. I talk to so many aspiring authors who admit they haven't actually read a novel since they were required to read in high school or college. And then they say there's no point in picking up a book now because they don't want it to influence their writing, which really sounds to me like a bit of a lazy excuse. Sure, avoiding reading of all kind is a fine approach if you intend to write only for yourself and never get published. But if you want to see your book on the shelf one day, you should know what's already on that shelf. So next time you're out and about, stop by your local bookstore. Go to the section of the store where your book would one day live. Pick up a book that came out recently, within the past 10 years, by a living author. Bonus points if it's a debut author. Buy it, and then read it. Not only will this give you a sense of what your future readers are enjoying today, but reading is one of the absolute best ways to improve your own craft. It'll help you internalize story structure, pacing, character, and style in a way that no craft advice can. I'm not at all saying that you should copy what's already being published out there or write to specific trends. But you should know what the publishing landscape is like if you intend to bring your own voice into it. As someone who reads for a living, I know how hard it can be to carve out time for pleasure reading, especially when you have a million other things on your plate. Two of my favorite tips for fitting reading into a busy schedule is to read for 10 minutes just before bed instead of scrolling on your phone, or to listen to audiobooks while you're cleaning, cooking, or walking the dog. Yes, I do believe that listening to audiobooks counts as reading. Reading is going to make you such a stronger writer, and it's not even going to feel like work. This next tip is a brutal one, but it's the one that separates wannabe authors from the ones who make it. Pick up the axe. No book is perfect on the first draft. No, not even from your favorite best-selling author. When writers are just starting out, they often treat their draft like it's sacred, like no word can be changed. But if you want to craft the best possible story, you need to be willing to break it down and tear it apart to build it back up stronger. This is the work that I love doing as a developmental editor, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not easy, and sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you have to remove scenes or characters or plot lines that you personally love. Sometimes, yes, you have to make an edit that changes every single scene. That's not because the work you did in the first draft was bad. It's just that it was step one in the process of bringing the strongest version of this story to life. Great stories aren't written. They're rewritten, often rewritten many times. So the sooner you can stop being precious with your manuscript, the sooner you can learn to kill your darlings, the sooner that you can learn to embrace the revision process, the better off you'll be. I promise that you're going to love your book so much more once you're willing to take the axe to it, even if it feels bad in the moment. This next tip will save you a lot of disappointment. Don't let the wrong people read it. Sharing your book with someone is an incredibly vulnerable, scary act. So it makes sense that new authors often turn to the people they trust the most first. Your best friend, your partner, your mom. But it's actually very rarely the case that these are the right people to give you the feedback that you need at this point. They can't be objective. They know how hard you've worked on this project, so they're likely going to shield you from their most honest opinions because they don't want to hurt your feelings or damage your relationship. So they often end up giving you vague praise that is, at best, not helpful, and at worst, gives you a false sense of security. What you need at this point isn't for someone to give you a pat on the back, but for someone to give you real, actionable feedback that will make your story better. So be incredibly thoughtful and selective in who you ask for feedback. The quality of the feedback always matters more than the quantity. Ask, does this person have a background in writing or editing? Do they read avidly in my genre and understand what I'm trying to accomplish with my book? Do they have the ability to give me honest, constructive feedback? And before you hand your manuscript over to anyone, ask yourself, am I really ready to receive critique on this book? If you'd like transformative feedback on your story from some of the best in-class editors who have worked in the publishing industry, go to my website, alyssamatesic.com, and tell me about your book. This next tip sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually your secret weapon when you get stuck. Walk away from your story. You've been grinding away at your draft late at night for weeks now. You've reread your draft 10 times now and just feel overwhelmed by the revision process. When you are this deep in your story, you simply can't see the forest from the trees. You're still likely seeing the book you intended to write, not what you actually put down on the page. You're blind to all of the issues and gaps that readers will notice quickly. So when you're down with a bad case of writer's block, or you're feeling paralyzed by the revision process, here's what I want you to do. Take a break from your project. There's actually science behind why a break is so productive and necessary. It activates a different part of your brain and allows you to creatively problem solve when you return to your project. I promise you're going to have so much more clarity after you get some distance from your book. So the best thing you can do after you finish your draft is to let it sit for at least a week, but several weeks is even better. Take this time to do something else entirely and refill your creative well. Read something new, make some art, practice music. This isn't abandoning your story. You're actually nurturing it. This next tip is one of the hardest things to do when you're just starting out. Tell someone you're a writer. As someone who has worked in publishing, trust me when I say there are no specific credentials that you need to become a writer. I've worked with authors who got book deals with major publishers with no writing background of any kind. No MFA, no previous publications. If you don't believe me, watch this video where I debunk the myths about what you need to get a book deal. If you are writing actively and consistently, you are a writer. Full stop. Too often, writers downplay their writing in conversations. When someone asks what you do for work or for your hobby, you say, well, I'm trying to write a book. Or you say, well, I'm hoping to become a writer one day. Here's my challenge for you. The next time someone asks one of those questions, say, I'm a writer. That's it. You do not need to be published to call yourself a writer. And while we're talking about it, you don't have to be a certain age. When Delia Owens published her debut novel, Where the Crawdads Sing, she was 69, and it was a massive success. Owning your identity as a writer can shift everything, because you will legitimize your writing to yourself. You'll likely prioritize it more and take it more seriously, and so will everyone around you. This next tip can make or break your entire book. Get the beginning right. When a reader or a literary agent picks up your book, the first few pages are everything. It's where they decide, is this worth my time? Do I want to keep turning the pages? I spend more time helping authors with the first pages than any other part of their manuscripts. The first pages are so important that I've been doing a series where I workshop the openings of novels submitted by all of you. Those pages need to spark curiosity in the reader. We need to care about seeing where the story goes. There needs to be a sense of momentum propelling us into the next scene and the next scene and the next scene. But too often, those first pages are bogged down by backstory or world building, or they carry no tension or conflict. You can't ask the reader to give you 50 pages to set up the story because that's where it really starts, because they'll never get there. The truth is that you're probably not going to get the opening right on the first draft. That's totally okay. But once your draft is complete, go back to that first chapter. Ask, is this really the right place to begin my story? Do I plant enough curiosity seeds for the reader? Do I give them a reason to care? Your beginning is your invitation into your book. Give the reader no choice but to accept it. This next tip is for all of you who are considering submitting your book to literary agents or publishers. Don't jump the gun. I get it. You've finished your draft and you're excited to take the next steps. You're starting to envision a book deal, your book launch party, your book on the shelf. But querying literary agents too soon is the biggest mistake I see authors make when they're trying to get traditionally published. That's because your draft probably isn't ready yet. And once a literary agent passes on your manuscript, that door is very hard to reopen. Remember that publishing is not a race, and there is so much more for you to gain from waiting until your book is really ready. You should ideally have gone through several drafts, including developmental revisions, before sending your manuscript out to literary agents. That's because querying is highly competitive, and agents are looking for manuscripts that are polished and nearly ready to send to publishers. It's the same reason why turnkey houses are easier to sell than fixer-uppers. So take the time to go through several meaningful rounds of thoughtful edits, get feedback, and make sure to take a break from your manuscript so you can see it clearly. The traditional publishing process is going to test your patience. It's slower than any of us would like. But if it's your dream, take the time to give your book the best shot. This last tip is what will enable you to keep going even when the publishing process gets you down. Practice getting rejected. Every writer you admire has been rejected. Most, many times over. So it's going to happen to you too. You'll get bad reviews. You'll get passed up for awards and bestseller lists. If you traditionally publish, you'll get rejected by literary agents and then by publishers. And it's going to sting, at least at first. No matter how many times you hear, don't take it personally. Of course this is personal to you. This is your book. But rejection will become easier to deal with if you practice not letting it faze you. So try facing rejection in small, contained ways that feel lower stakes. Maybe you submit a short story that you whipped up one night that you don't care that much about to a literary journal or a contest. Maybe you share a chapter that you know is super rough to a critique group. Let people not like your work and see that you're still standing. Rejection doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It just means you're in the game. You're putting yourself out there. And that's what real writers do. Here are my final words for you. Writing a book will be one of the hardest things you ever do, but also likely one of the most rewarding. And I hope you'll carry some of these tips with you as your writing career blossoms. I've worked with hundreds of authors over my career, and they all fall into one of 4 distinct categories with their own strengths and weaknesses. So watch this video to discover what writer type you are. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.